Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Barry's Book Reviews. This is episode number 31, and today I'm reviewing a novel called Scenes from the Enlightenment. The Korean title is actually Daeha. I'll get to the Korean title in a minute or two. And this novel was written by Kim Namcheon, and it was translated by Charles La Shure. Charles La Shure is a professor here in Seoul at Seoul National University. And he also translated Kim Young-ha's novel Black Flower, and it's a very good novel, and you can find an interview on the channel with me interviewing Charles La Shure about his translation of this book. And this English translation of today's book, of Scenes from the Enlightenment, was published in 2014 by the Dalkey Archive as part of the Dalkey Archive Library of Modern Korean Literature. And this is an excellent collection of books, and I've read quite a few of these books. I think I've already reviewed a couple of books on the channel, and you can see them behind me here on this shelf here. So this is the Library of Modern Korean Literature by the Dalkey Archive. I think I'm just missing one book from the collection, which should be on its way to me from a delivery service at the moment. Anyway, so today's book, the translation was published in 2014. It was originally published in Korean in 1939, and it's seen as one of Kim Namcheon's most important works. He was quite a significant writer. He was thought to be quite a significant writer at the time, and this book is generally regarded as his most important novel, his most important contribution to Korean literature. And Kim actually has, an interesting biography. People at this time often have interesting biographies. He was born in 1911, so this was just after Japan annexed Korea. And he spent a significant portion of his life under Japanese colonial rule. And he started writing at an early age. He was interested in socialism, and he wanted, when he started writing, to support factory workers through his literature, right, through his work. And he was actually expelled from a Japanese university for supporting sort of leftist, left-wing causes. It was quite common for intellectuals and writers, Korean intellectuals and writers, if they wanted to go to university, they would have to go to Japan, and then often they'd come back to Korea and continue their careers. And after liberation, so in 1945, he traveled north, and he apparently started a kind of socialist literature group. However, what happened to him after that isn't really known. It's not sure. He seems to have disappeared from public life in about 1953, and some people think that he was executed, or it seems possible that he was executed. But if that did happen, it was undocumented, and it's not known for certain. So anyway, he had an interesting life, and he lived through this sort of turbulent period in Korean history. So before I get into the novel itself, I just want to talk about the English title a little bit. So the English title is Scenes from the Enlightenment, but the Korean title is Daeha, and Daeha literally means great river. So why wasn't this used for the English translation? Why isn't this book called Great River? And the translator, Professor La Shure, he explains this in his introduction, and his introduction is fantastic. It does a great job of contextualizing the novel in its sort of historical, the historical context that it came from. So apparently, the publisher, so the people at Dalkey Archive, they weren't keen on this title of Great River. Maybe they thought it was too general or too vague in some way. And so, how did they come up with this title of Scenes from the Enlightenment? So Kim Namcheon, he planned to write a sequel to this novel, but he only completed one short story, or at least we only have one short story seems to remain. And the title for that short story was Kehwa Punkyong, which literally means blooming scenery, 개화 풍경, and that became the inspiration for the English translation's title, Scenes from the Enlightenment. So it's always interesting to see what happens. Sometimes the translation titles go through this sort of process of change. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so what enlightenment does the title refer to? And what type of scenes is Kim depicting in this novel? So the novel is set in a small village, and it's actually Kim's hometown, his real hometown, Songcheon, which wasn't too far from Pyongyang, which is, of course, now in North Korea. It's now the North Korean capital. And it takes place around 1910. And the Enlightenment referred to in the title is the arrival of modernity to this small village. And so what we see is kind of this microcosm of a society and a culture that's in flux as the traditions of the 19th century give way to the new trends, the new fashions, and the new customs of the century, which has just begun. So we see this sort of microcosm of a society transforming and changing. And reading this novel, it reminded me of classic English Victorian literature. So think of Jane Austen or George Eliot. These novels where we see a family and the rules of etiquette and behavior that they live by and they operate in. And then we also see how different generations react to social changes. And we especially see this through the sort of strategizing that takes place to secure appropriate marriages. And there's a family at the center of this story, and this family, they sort of embody and reflect the changing society, the world that's changing around them. And the head of this family is Park Song-won, so it's the Park family, and Park Song-won, he's the father, and he's become wealthy through money lending and commercial activities. And so he represents the ascendance of commerce and capitalism over tradition. And in the community, he's referred to as Assistant Curator Pak. He has 3 sons, and over the course of the novel, Pak will try to find brides for all of them, or he's found a bride for his eldest son. The novel starts with the marriage of his second son, and so most of the novel is concerned with finding the third son, the most problematic son, a suitable bride. And it's through this that Kim depicts the changing customs as well as his theory of folk ways. And Kim had this very interesting theory that he referred to as folk ways, or Professor La Shure translates as folk ways. And we can see this in the customs that Kim describes in the novels. So Professor La Shure, the translator, writes that Kim saw folk ways, quote, not simply as interesting customs and pastimes, but also a means through which to understand history. And we can see this in these detailed descriptions of the marriage that the novel begins with, and then the festival at the end of the book. So we have these 2 bookends. The novel opens with the preparations for this big marriage that the family and the community are involved in, and then it ends with a depiction of a festival which also involves the whole community. And the marriage at the beginning of the story is the marriage in which Assistant Curator Pak is marrying off his second son. So he's secured a suitable bride for the second son. His eldest son has previously been married, and now it's the second eldest. It's his turn to get married. And we get a very detailed description of the planning and organizing of this, sort of big, significant social event for the community. And we see it from all sorts of different points of views. We see it from the point of view of the son who's getting married. We see it from the bride who's marrying into this rich, wealthy family. And we see it from the point of view of the servants as well. And it's a really great way to start the novel. It's very, sort of engaging, and it's rich and it's detailed. And there's all of these interesting little customs that we get some insight into. So, for example, the husband and bride haven't seen each other's faces, that they won't see each other's faces until after they're married on their wedding night, and they both have this kind of anxiety, and they're wondering what does their husband, what does their wife look like, and the first time they see each other is also interesting. And apparently it was very common practice for the servants and family members, they would sort of hide or loiter outside the betrothal bedroom to hear the exclamations of when the husband and wife saw each other for the first time. And it's very atmospheric, and it sort of pulls you into the story, and it's a great opening. But also what we see during the planning and the event, this big event that takes place, is that some traditional customs they're being observed, but some are being abandoned. And this leads to some amusement and some consternation amongst the guests and the servants, when we see that some things are being followed and some things aren't being followed. And through this description, we know that life is changing, right? The way that people live in this small village and the world at large around them is beginning to change. Some significant changes are beginning to happen. And we'll see that even more as Pak tries to marry his youngest son, and marrying off his youngest son proves to be much more difficult. So why is it more difficult for him to marry the youngest son? What obstacles does he have in doing this? So assistant curator Pak's youngest son, Hyung-hyo, is his concubine's son. So not his legitimate wife, his concubine, and as such most respectable families probably would not want to have him marry their precious daughters. However, the Pak family is a rising family in the region. They're rich, they're very wealthy, and because they're wealthy, they're also very influential. And so perhaps an appropriate bride, or a valuable bride, or a good match for the family can be found, right? The money talks. The money's beginning to talk. However, the youngest son is also the family member who's most eager to embrace the changing traditions. He wants things to change. He wants to be part of the changing society. And in an early scene, he persuades one of his classmates to join him in cutting off their long braids. And their mothers are scandalized by the fact that they come home from school one day with their long braids. They've snipped them off, they've cut them off. And then later he'll also dabble in this new religion of Christianity, which is spreading across the country. The most significant issue for Hyung-gyo is that he wants to choose his own romantic partner. It's a story as old as time. And he's initially infatuated with the bride selected for his elder brother, and he resents not being able to pursue her for himself. And then his eye falls on a pretty servant girl, and his mother sort of conspires to remove the servant girl from his presence, remove this girl from his thoughts. And then there's the new giseng in town. So giseng were sort of singers and performers and courtesans, and sort of similar to concubines. So through his romantic misadventures, we again see how the sort of traditional values are slipping, right? These values that people have held on to are beginning to lose their hold on people. So anyway, overall, what does this book tell us about the changing society in the early part of the 20th century in Korea? So one view could be, and there are critics that have said this, that what we're seeing in this book is the fading of Korea's traditional Confucian culture as it slowly eroded and replaced by ideas from the West, right? So we can see this in the rise of this sort of capitalist class of people represented by the Pak family, represented by assistant curator Pak. We can see it in the spread of the new religion of Christianity, and we can even see it in the arrival of modern devices like bicycles and lamps, kerosene lamps, and even socks. So the feudal society is on the way out. and it's getting replaced. And we see how the importance of family name, of lineage, of status, rank is being replaced and challenged by wealth and money. And we see these things play out across the marriages and the festivals that Kim sort of revels in detailing for the reader. I think this is an immensely enjoyable book. If you're a fan of Jane Austen, or if you're a fan of books like A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth, this is absolutely the same kind of book. And it's a real shame that this book isn't as well known as it perhaps could be, because it's doing something very similar to those sort of classic and famous books by Jane Austen or Vikram Seth, right? And it is a shame. This is a great collection of books, right? The Dalkey Archive collection of books, it's fantastic. But I'm not the first person to note that maybe more could have been done to promote these books. Because books like this, Scenes from the Enlightenment by Kim Namcheon, they genuinely deserve to be much more widely known and much more widely appreciated. So anyway, it's a very strong recommendation from me today. The book is Scenes from the Enlightenment by Kim Namcheon, and it's translated by Charles La Shure. Anyway, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.